Have you ever said something sarcastic and later realized that it pushed you further apart with the person you were sarcastic with? Or they used sarcasm on you and now you're hurt and you just don't feel like talking to that person? Have you ever found yourself using humor to avoid uncomfortable conversations or just even a real conversation? If so, you're not alone. And today we're diving into 3 toxic communication habits: deflection, passive aggressiveness, and sarcasm that silently destroy relationships. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back to this channel, Unmute with Priya. I'm your host, Priya. And if this is your first time here, I help women 40 plus who are in perimenopause and menopause find their voice in relationships and start creating deeper connections. So before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel so that you can get alerted every time I drop new content. As we explore these 3 patterns, deflection, passive aggressiveness, and sarcasm, I'm going to show you exactly what they look like, why we do them, and most importantly, how to not do them so that we can finally be heard and understood in the way that we deserve, and also identify it as communication patterns in somebody that you're communicating with. Sometimes we have these conversations with people and we don't know why we feel so bad about it after we've had that conversation. It could be these 3 patterns. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive in. So we're going to talk about deflection first. It's the art of dodging responsibility. Now, deflection is when we shift the focus away from ourselves to avoid accountability or uncomfortable emotions. It's like playing emotional hot potato. The second something feels uncomfortable comes our way, we're tossing it right back. And here's what it looks like in real life. So somebody might come to you and say, "Hey, I noticed you've been really distant lately. Is everything okay?" Now, instead of taking a few moments of pause to reflect and respond honestly, you deflect. "Well, you've been working late every night, so maybe ask yourself why I'm distant." Or imagine this scenario. You forgot to pick up something at the store like you said you would. And when somebody mentions it could be your mom or your dad or anybody that in your household. And when they bring it up to you, instead of owning it, you say, "Well, you forgot to take out the trash last week, so I guess we're even." There's that game of playing, oh, we're even now. Let's see what's happening here. Instead of staying with the original issue, your distance, your forgotten commitment, you're immediately redirecting the conversation somewhere else. You're making it about them, about the past, and about anything except what's actually being discussed. And this happens in the workplace too. Think about having a meeting with an employee or a team member, and maybe you're talking about performance or data or anything that needs to be addressed. And you've got to focus about what that meeting's going to be about. Next thing you know, that employee has taken you on this journey, and now the focus is off of them. And you're not even talking about the real issue at hand. That is deflection. But here's the thing that I want you to understand about deflection, because we all do it. We've all done it. This is not just about saying, okay, you can identify in someone else. It's not necessarily malicious. Most of the time we're deflecting because vulnerability feels scary. And many of us as girls learned that expressing our needs, admitting our mistakes, asking for help, or showing emotions makes us difficult or too much, or it just was not appropriate for that culture. We got in trouble for it. So we've learned to deflect as a protective mechanism. But here's the problem. While deflection might feel safer in the moment, it keeps us trapped in silence while pretending to speak. Think about that. We're pretending to speak, but it's keeping us stuck in silence still. We're talking, but not actually communicating anything real about yourself, your feelings, or your experience. When you deflect, you're essentially saying, "I'm not safe enough to be vulnerable with you, so I'm going to make this about something else." And then the other person receives that message loud and clear, even if you don't realize you're sending it. The other issue with deflection is that it makes everything about winning and losing instead of understanding and connection. When somebody brings up a concern and you deflect, you're essentially trying to level the playing field by bringing up their faults. But relationships aren't courtrooms. The goal isn't to prove who's more wrong. And deflection can even show up in milder forms when you go in to speak to someone. it doesn't necessarily that they're going to say, oh, well, what about you? Or, well, I guess we're even now. It could be, this has happened numerous times at other workplaces where I go to talk about something, and next thing you know, we're talking about the food they're eating, or we're talking about something from their house. And I don't know how I got there, because when you've deflected your whole life, you actually become pretty skilled. How do we break this pattern? How do we unmute ourselves from deflection? First thing you need to do is pause. And I say this with any client. You just have to give yourself a few seconds of pause. And that pause time is the moment of whether you're going to respond or react. So those few seconds of pause are so crucial. The moment that you feel that urge to redirect, to bring up something someone else did, when the focus is on you, to make it about anything other than what's being discussed, stop. Take a breath. Then name what you feel instead of redirecting. If your partner says you've been distant, instead of deflecting with, well, you work too much, try something like, yeah, you're right. I've been distant. I've been feeling overwhelmed, and I wasn't sure how to talk about it. Or if you forgot to buy something, instead of bringing up something that they didn't do last week, try, yeah, you're right. I did forget. I've been feeling scattered lately, and I should have written it down. And you know what? I think I need some help with this. Maybe we can work together to figure this out. Like, I'm overwhelmed. It's simple, clear, and powerful. You're taking responsibility, and the act of taking responsibility is so powerful. It has the power to shift and heal relationships. You're sharing what's actually going on for you, and you're creating space for real connection instead of a power struggle. It takes practice, but every time you choose vulnerability over deflection, you're choosing connection over control. And that's where real intimacy lies. Intimacy is not just about with intimate partners. It's intimacy in relationships, that closeness, that connection that we're desiring with others. Or as humans, we live off of connection. We're wired for relationships. We're wired for connection. I'm often talking about a certain dynamic, a certain relationship that I had that really brought a lot of these patterns to the surface. And we were at a concert, and it was just, all of us in a group were joking. And at the most inopportune time, this person deflected to bring up something from a week ago, and then proceeded to be angry with me for the rest of the time. It actually made my blood boil. As I talk about it, I remember how much my blood was boiling, because I was thinking, how did we get here? Why are you bringing this up now? And that was that person's way of deflecting from whatever was coming up in that situation. Let's go into passive aggressiveness. It's the silent scream, as my friends and I like to call it. This one's big, and I see it everywhere, and I am guilty of it. Passive aggressiveness is expressing anger or frustration indirectly. It's not just saying, hey, I'm really pissed with you right now. It's indirect. Sighs, eye rolls, sarcastic comments, subtle digs, because direct expression feels unsafe or impossible. And so let me paint a picture of what this might look like. It's dinner time, you've had a long day, you're cooking, cleaning, managing the kids, and your partner's sitting on the couch, scrolling through their phone. We talked about scrolling on yesterday's episode. You want help, you need help, but instead of asking directly, you start making noise. You're slamming cabinet doors, sighing heavily, maybe muttering under your breath. Must be nice to relax while some people do everything around here. I'm guilty of doing this. I had people in my home who said they were going to help, and they didn't help. For whatever reason, I didn't just come out and say, hey, I need your help right now. Instead, I started banging my cabinets. I started sighing. I went silent. We ate dinner together in silence while this person was trying to connect with me, because I was so angry, because I couldn't communicate that. Let's give another example, just so you have a good frame of reference. Partner, your friend makes plans without checking with you first, and you're hurt. And instead of saying, it hurt my feelings that you didn't even ask me about this, you say, Don't worry about me. I'll figure out what to do with myself. It's those that kind of comments that are passive aggressive. With that type of tone, it makes it crystal clear that you're anything but fine. That line, I'm fine, the best passive aggressive line that I'm guilty of using. I'm fine. When you're not. And meanwhile, I'm saying I'm fine, but I'm giving silent treatment. I'm irritated. I'm not making eye contact. I'm being distant. And now you're saying I'm fine, and that's leaving the other person to figure out what they did wrong. Does it sound familiar? Yeah, I thought so. Now, before we go any further, I want to normalize this for you. Passive aggressiveness is not a character flaw. It's a strategy, just as deflection, that we've developed to survive in environments where direct expression felt unsafe or unwelcome. And I would say for myself that passive aggressive behavior was something that I learned within my family. Communication was never a thing. It was just ignore it, put your fingers in your ears, go la, 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 and hope that it goes away. So it was a learned behavior, and I didn't even realize I was being passive aggressive, but I could notice it in others. I was quick to say to that partner, God, you're so passive aggressive. And I actually think that's what came up that evening. You're so passive aggressive. And then that turned into, oh, you just so perfect, aren't you? It can definitely devolve into this abyss of ugly communication. Now think about it. Many of us were raised with messages like, good girls don't get angry, don't rock the boat, be nice. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. There's all these different things that were said to us over time, like a commercial on TV constantly replaying itself and programming you. And we've learned that expressing our needs directly made us demanding, showing anger made us unlovable, having boundaries is being difficult. And so we've found other ways to communicate our frustration. We've learned to express our needs sideways, essentially, through hints and implications and subtle behaviors. And why don't you know? You should already know what I'm thinking. Hoping someone would pick up on what we're trying to say. As I talk about this right now, I'm thinking what I really had inside of me was like, I just want to be understood. I don't know how to communicate this right now, but I just want you to understand what I'm feeling inside, because what I'm feeling inside feels horrible right now. Yeah, I was passive aggressive for so much of my relationship, and that's probably why I could identify it in others so easily. I learned that love meant suffering in silence and hoping someone would rescue me. Here's the truth about passive aggressiveness. It's actually a cry for a voice in disguise. Another way your soul is trying to unmute, but it doesn't know how to. When you're being passive aggressive, you're essentially saying, I have needs and feelings, but I don't believe I'm allowed to express them directly. So I'm going to express them in this roundabout way and hope you get the message. Can you imagine? That's what the intention of passive aggressive behavior is. Problem is, this strategy, this communication style backfires more often than not. When you're passive aggressive, people don't usually respond with compassion and understanding. As that example I gave before, they respond with pushback, deflection. They'll match your anger. They respond with frustration, confusion, or end up shutting down altogether. And you end up feeling more unheard and unseen than before. Let me give you some specific examples of how to transform passive-aggressive communication into direct, powerful communication. Instead of slamming dishes and slamming cabinets and muttering under your breath about everything you're doing, try saying, I'm feeling overwhelmed with dinner. Can you help me with the dishes tonight? Or, hey, you said that you were going to help me. Let's do this together. I need help with this. Or you could even say, if somebody's in the middle of something, hey, could you put that down and come and help me for a second? Instead of, oh, don't worry about me. Try, when you do this without checking with me, I feel left out and I don't feel good about it. Let's talk about how to handle this. And instead of I'm fine, when you're clearly not fine, try, I'm not fine. I'm hurt about what happened earlier or the other day, and I need some time to process it before we talk about it. And I was actually with this person able to do that in the beginning. They had done something that was so hurtful. And I said that. I said, I'm not fine. I'm really hurt and I need some time to process. Give me some time. And then a couple of hours later, we were talking. It was early on in the relationship, but slowly their dysfunctional way of communicating started to overtake that I had this skill of being able to communicate in a healthy way. And so then I really embodied passive aggressive behavior as a coping mechanism. Do you see the difference? In passive aggressive versions, your partner has to guess what you need, or if somebody's being passive aggressive with you, you have to guess what they need. There's so much work involved in interpreting your mood or the other's mood, and somehow magically you're supposed to know how to fix it, or they're supposed to know how to fix it in you. In the direct versions, you're giving them clear information about your feelings and specific ways to respond. And, if you're new to this channel, I am a speech and language pathologist. I've spent 20 plus years working with children and adults to help them find their voice. And a lot of times, especially when I was working with children in early intervention, birth to 3, I was supporting them first words and to then actually put words together and then make sentences. And what I always helped that child with was communicating in a way that was direct. I want this. I don't want this. And that direct way of communicating really benefited that child in communicating their needs to their family. I always heard from their family members saying, oh my gosh, I understand what they want. That was common goal. Communicate their wants and needs. So in the direct versions, you are communicating your wants and needs. So this is what I mean when I talk about unmuting yourself. Passive aggressiveness is actually a form of self-silencing. You're expressing yourself, but you're doing it in a way that ensures that you're not going to be heard or understood. And when you choose directness over passive aggressiveness, you're choosing to trust that your needs and your feelings are valid and worth expressing clearly. You're choosing to believe that you deserve to be heard and understood, not just put up with. Here's something beautiful that happens when you make this shift. People actually respond better to directness than to passive aggressiveness. When you're clear about what you need, when you're clear about what upset you, when you're direct, people know how to help you. People can work with you. And the right people, I often talk about it, the right people are going to be there side by side with you trying to figure this out with you. The wrong people are not going to support you. They're actually going to make it worse. And that was my experience. When you're passive aggressive or the other person is passive aggressive, everybody is just ending up frustrated and confusion. Let's talk about sarcasm. That is the armor that keeps love out. I absolutely hate sarcasm. I would say that I've been good at deflection and I've been good at passive aggressiveness, but never really embodied sarcasm. But I attracted people who use sarcasm as their main form of communication with me. It seems like it's so harmless, even playful, right? But in our culture that celebrates sarcasm, in our comedy, social media, everyday conversations. But when it comes to relationships, friendships, or intimate, it is so destructive. It is so hurtful. Here's what it really is. It's a way of expressing hurt and anger or frustration while maintaining plausible deniability. What does that mean? It allows you to say something cutting, digging, while hiding behind the defense of, I was just kidding, or can't you take a joke? I heard that so much in this last relationship. They would say something that was like sliced to my jugular. And then immediately after, I was kidding. Can't you take a joke? Just kidding. That sarcasm was so hurtful. So let me give a couple of examples of this. So friend or partner suggests going to someone's house for dinner and you respond, oh great, another delightful evening with your friends. The words say one thing, but your tone says something completely different. Here's an example that I went through with my partner at the time. Was coming home and I'm working really hard and this person was just talking about how many naps they were taking. It was creating a lot of frustration. It was a complete mismatch and the relationship should have ended. But I was enduring it, putting up with a lot of stuff actually. And then I remember having a really long day, back-to-back sessions, and then they came over and they were talking about how tired they were. They weren't going to help with dinner, and they were just laying there talking about the naps that they took during the day. And out of frustration, I said, well, you want to just call your mom and tell her? She'll tell you she's proud of you for taking a nap. I was expressing resentment about what they were doing during their day and doing it through sarcasm instead of having a real conversation. Now, this other person didn't have any capacity to have any real conversations. Often when they came over, every single day for 5 years, I heard, what's for dinner? It created so much frustration. They had the entire day to plan what could have been for dinner, and they didn't. Instead, they used sarcasm to say, hey, dinner's not prepped. What are we eating? And then meanwhile, complained about anything that I would have cooked. That sarcasm was so hurtful. It felt like knives in me every single time I heard it. Here's another common one. Your partner disagrees with you about something and you respond with, oh, sure, you're always right. Oh, I heard that all the time. And with an eye roll and a laugh. But beneath that laugh is real anger and hurt. I often heard that too. Oh, you're such a know-it-all. You know everything. And I said, what do I do that gives off that I'm saying that I know everything? I have never claimed to be a know-it-all. What about it? But yet they use that line all the time. You're such a know-it-all. I got a laugh and a roll, and they walked away. Cut down communication. I had no say. I had to just grin and bear it and swallow it. The thing about sarcasm is that it feels safer than direct confrontation. When you're being sarcastic, you can express negative feelings without having to own them fully. If someone gets upset with you, you can always say, I was just joking. Why are you being so sensitive? Here's what sarcasm actually does to your relationships. It creates so much distance. Every sarcastic comment is like putting up a little wall between you and that relationship. You're protecting yourself from vulnerability. And yes, but you're also protecting yourself from real connection. Now, I'm sharing this from conversations with other women that I've had, plus my own experience, that the other person in their dynamic became so reliant on sarcasm that I just stopped sharing good news with them because I knew that there would be a comment disguised as humor. I can't say whether they were trying to be mean or not. I know that that person was protecting themselves from feeling left behind because I was really taking my life to the next level. But sarcasm pushes away the very person that you want to feel closer to. Let me tell you why women especially lean on sarcasm. Now, this isn't, like I said, this is not a communication style that I have embodied. I'm actually quite repulsed by it. I think it was a communication pattern that was used often, even in my family, and I just didn't recognize it, so I'm very sensitive to it. But I've also attracted a lot of relationships into my life where sarcasm was the main form of communication. I remember going on a date with a guy about 20 years ago in New York City, and I was excited for this. 2 hours of every single line being sarcastic. And I ended up drinking a little bit more just so that I can tolerate this date. Maybe if it were now, I would have just walked out so I didn't have to drink. But it was so intolerable. And whatever this person's emotional capacity or capability was, they felt that they just had to match everything that I said with sarcasm. As if we're going back to why women lean on sarcasm, we've been conditioned to soften everything. We're supposed to be nice, agreeable, supportive. So when we have harder feelings like anger, resentment, disappointment, we don't feel like we can express them directly. And then sarcasm becomes a way to express those feelings while still maintaining being nice. It's like emotional bubble wrap. Cushions the blow for us, but it also ensures that our real feelings don't land with any impact. And that could be the case for the person who is really using sarcasm as their main communication style. Again, sarcasm isn't connection, it's control. Every single time this person used sarcasm with me, I felt like I was being controlled. I felt like I was being muted and shut down. When you're being sarcastic, you're trying to control how your feelings are being received. You want to express your hurt or anger, but you don't want to be responsible for the full weight of those emotions. Guess what? Real intimacy in connection, in relationships, requires dropping that armor. It requires being willing to say I'm hurt or I'm angry without any kind of protective coating, without sarcasm, without humor. Let's go into how to transform sarcastic communication into vulnerable, connecting communication. Instead of, oh, great, another evening with your family or your friends, try, you know what? I feel anxious about going there. Every time I go there, I just feel anxious and I still feel uncomfortable about what happened last time. Instead of, lucky me, another late night at work, try, I'm happy about your promotion. I'm also feeling lonely with these late nights. Let's talk about how to balance this. And instead of, oh, sure, you're always right, try, I feel so unheard when you dismiss me, my perspective. Let's slow down and really listen to each other. Now, do you feel the difference? In the sarcastic version, you're hiding your feelings behind a protective wall. And in the vulnerable versions, you're offering the other person, or you're being offered to access what's really going on inside of you. And once again, and I say this every single time, the right people will want to work with you on having this conversation. The wrong people are going to take this to DEFCON 10, or even as you express your emotions, they're going to make it even worse with deflection, passive aggressiveness, or sarcasm. Now, I want to acknowledge that this all feels scary. Dropping sarcasm means dropping protection. It means being willing to stand in your feelings without armor, and that requires tremendous courage. It does. But when you make this shift, people can respond to your real needs instead of trying to decode your sarcasm or communication pattern. When you say, I feel lonely, hopefully your partner is going to offer comfort. When you say, I feel anxious, whoever you're speaking to is going to offer reassurance. When you say, I feel unheard, you're going to get attention. When there's sarcasm involved, whether it's you or the other person, all you can do is laugh along, which doesn't address the real feelings, or get defensive. And that just even creates more distance. Sarcasm may feel like speaking up, but it's actually another form of self-silencing. It's another way of muting. You're expressing yourself in a way that ensures that you won't be fully seen or understood. So let's start to bring this all together. We've talked about a lot in this short episode. 3 patterns: deflection, passive aggressiveness, and sarcasm. And they seem like communication, but they're actually forms of self-silencing, and they are super destructive. Here's what I want you to understand. Silence it's not just about not speaking or keeping your mouth shut. It's about speaking in ways that keep you unheard, unseen, and misunderstood. When you deflect, you're avoiding being truly known. When you're passive aggressive, you're expressing your needs in a way that makes them hard to meet. When you're sarcastic, you're sharing your feelings in a way that keeps people at arm's length. All 3 of these patterns serve the same function. They protect you from the vulnerability of being fully seen and heard. And I get it. Vulnerability is scary. It requires courage to say I'm hurt instead of deflecting to something your partner did wrong. It takes strength to say I need help instead of slamming dishes or cabinets and hoping someone notices. And it takes bravery to say, I feel left out, because instead of making a sarcastic comment about always being right. It takes a lot of courage. And for a last example, I remember being away from home with this partner, and something had happened in the family dynamic, and I completely shut down. And so I was being a child. I had no coping mechanism at the time, and that hurt this person. So in the morning, we had a 17-hour drive back to the house. And so there was a few hours of silence in those first hours of driving home. And then when we finally pulled over, I broke down and said, this is how I'm feeling. I'm sorry I acted this way. I took responsibility for how I was acting because I was being passive aggressive. I was talking to everybody else except him because I was blaming him that I had to endure this situation. And I was vulnerable. I expressed what I need. Now, a nice person, a person who should be in your life, will honor that and hold you and try to make you feel better and try to make you feel seen and heard. Instead, what I got was 15 hours of silence all the way back home. So, like I said, all of this takes bravery, and it takes time, and it takes commitment on your part to actually make the change. And you're not always going to be met with understanding from the other person. And that's when you have to consider, is this person good for me? Is this relationship good for me? Here's what I want you to know. The things that protect us from pain and also protect us from love. When you choose these protective patterns over vulnerable communication, you're choosing safety over connection. And while that might feel necessary sometimes, it's not sustainable for deep, intimate, close connection. So I want you to think about the relationships in your life. Here's your homework. Where you feel seen, most heard, most understood. And I'm willing to bet that those are the relationships where you've risked being direct, where you've dropped the armor and you show up authentically, and you've chosen vulnerability over protection. That's the invitation I'm offering you today. The next time you feel the urge to deflect, to be passive aggressive, or hide behind sarcasm, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what am I really trying to say here? What do I actually need? How can I express this in a way that invites connection instead of creating distance? And if somebody is passive aggressive, sarcastic, or deflecting with you, now you're going to have tools to understand what's happening. If you find that this conversation that you've had or that you've planned for has taken a nosedive into a place that you didn't even know it was going to go, and you're asking yourself, how did this get here? Understand that that other person might be deflecting, using passive aggressive behavior or sarcasm because they don't have the capacity to be vulnerable with you. It's not going to be perfect right away. You've been practicing these patterns for years, maybe decades, the other person as well. But every time you choose clarity over deflection, directness over passive aggressiveness, and vulnerability over sarcasm, you're choosing connection over control. You're choosing to be known, to be heard, to be seen over being protected. And guess what? That's where real love lies. Not in the safe space of protection, but in the brave space of being fully seen and known. If this episode resonated with you, and I have a feeling it did, I want you to do 3 things. First, like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and every like and subscription helps me reach more women who need to hear these messages about finding and using their voice. Second, I want you to share this episode with one person who needs to hear it. Maybe it's a friend who's been struggling in her relationship. Maybe it's a sibling who always deflects when things get hard. Or maybe it's just someone who could benefit from thinking about their communication patterns. Connection spreads through connection. And third, if you're ready to go deeper on this work of finding your voice and creating the relationships you truly want, click the link below, www.unmutewithpriya.com, and you can get access to my free training, 4 Steps to Finding Your Voice in Relationships. And for a limited time, you can also apply for a free 20-minute coaching call. Remember, your voice matters, your needs matter, your feelings matter, and you deserve relationships where all of those things are seen, heard, and honored. I'll see you next episode for more conversations around unmuting and finding your voice. Until then, keep speaking your truth.